So in this video, I'm going to talk about how you can prepare and how you can protect yourself when it comes to crashing on the bike. Now, unfortunately, mountain biking is a sport where accidents do happen, we do have crashes, it's just part of the sport. But what we want to do is try and prepare as best we can, so when it does inevitably happen, you're prepared for it and you're ready for it, so there's a much less chance of it being serious and there's much less chance of it being caught out. So me and Ben, my videographer, were kind of sat chatting, and originally we were going to come up with 4 tips, but I think we've got 12 tips in the end because we just kind of kept thinking up ideas. So we've put them in 3 different categories, and in this video I'm just going to chat about how you can keep safer on the bike, and I'm also going to use some real life examples of my mate being in an air ambulance and me breaking my wrist. So there'll be some real life examples thrown through this video. So it's actually a really important one. I would definitely take the next 10 minutes to sit and watch it because you don't know when it might help you or a friend out. Now if you want to watch more MTB fitness videos, then please do subscribe and make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it as well, please. Now without further ado, let's get into the video. Right, so there's 3 different categories here that I want to talk about when it comes to getting safer on the bike. Now, the first one is communication, and I want to talk a little bit about my best mate Ozzy's crash. So me and Ozzy were up at Gisborne Forest, which is in the northwest of the UK. I believe I'm horrendous at geography, but it's in the UK somewhere. We were riding at Gisborne Forest, and Ozzy decided to go face first off a drop, landed on his head, and at the time we thought he had, but he very nearly broke his neck. And what happened over kind of the next hour was I had to keep Ozzy perfectly still whilst getting in touch with 999 and getting an air ambulance to him. So when it came to that, the one thing that we absolutely needed was a charged mobile phone, because I obviously had to phone 999 and I was lucky that we were in an area of signal. But I was also on the phone for the full hour with them because I was on my own and we thought that he'd broken his neck. The dispatcher on the other end of the phone didn't want to put the phone down, so they stayed with me and stayed talking to me for the full hour whilst Ozzy was on the phone, kind of leant over, making sure that he was perfectly still. And they did that, I think, just to make sure that, he didn't start moving around or things didn't get worse, and they just wanted to check. So it's really incredibly important to have a phone that's charged with you, and make sure that it's charged for more than you need. So even if you think, my phone's on 30%, I'm only going for an hour ride, you might crash 30 minutes into that hour ride and need that phone for a couple of hours. So make sure you always take a fully charged phone. If for any reason it isn't charged, make sure you get one of those 20 quid extra phone chargers, which are just like the size of another phone, but they'll charge your phone 2 or 3 times over if you carry them with you. So you absolutely need to have a phone with you. When it came to me being on the phone, I was actually guiding in the air ambulance and sort of waving and showing him where I was, and the person was talking, saying, "Is that you with the with the blue bike?" And they were chatting to you as you do it. So make sure you always have a phone that's fully charged. Right, tip number 2 is to make sure that you know the local emergency numbers. So sometimes if you're abroad, you can actually use, like in the UK or in England anyway, it's 999. If you're in America and type 999 and call, it tends to actually work and put you through to 911. But it's well worth checking just in case that you actually know the emergency numbers in case you need them. So hopefully you'll never need them. You'll probably need them very, very rarely if you do ever need them, but it's well worth knowing what they are. So if you're riding somewhere different, if you're going up to Scotland, or if you're going riding in France, for example, or in Canada, or just going somewhere else, just do a quick Google search and just check what the local emergency phone number is. And on that tip as well, make sure that you ask for the exact help that you need. So I was once just behind a car crash, or 2 cars slammed into each other, head on, smoke everywhere as you would imagine, and they were completely blocking the road. So I got out, made sure everybody was okay, phoned 999 and asked for an ambulance. Now it was only about 10-15 minutes into the call that I thought, why is there no police here? Nobody's come. And I phoned up and said, just to check, you're sending a police car as well as an ambulance, aren't you? And they were like, oh no, we just thought you needed an ambulance. So make sure that you actually ask for the exact help that you need. So if you need an ambulance, for example, and you're stuck up on a mountain, specifically ask for mountain rescue as well. If you need the police for any reason, because let's say a tree has come down and it's in the middle of the road and it landed on your mate, just a really random example that came to me. You need the ambulance, of course, for your mate, but you also want to tell them that you need the police as well because there's a log in the road, and you may need to say you need the fire service as well. Don't assume that the dispatcher will know what you need. Make sure you tell them exactly what you need. It's better for them to say, oh no, you don't need that, rather than them not sending it, because to you in that situation it can seem really obvious, but the person on the other end of the phone can't see exactly what you see. And that leads me on to number 3, and this is to know where you are and make sure that you've got a way of finding out your exact location with ease. So when me and Ozzy were up on that hillside, obviously Ozzy was completely out of action, and I had to keep making sure he lay down, make sure that he didn't want to move because he was a bit in shock and he kept trying to sit up. Not something you want to do when you think you've got a broken neck. So I had that on one side of it, and I was trying to describe where I was to the dispatcher, and I was telling her the name of the trails. Now obviously the dispatcher who's sat somewhere has no idea the name of the trail and what fire road I'm on, so she was trying to contact, or getting a teammate to contact the cafe so they could tell them where it was. And all the time I was trying to get the exact coordinates on my phone, but I didn't know how to get them. I'd never done it before, and it took me 10-15 minutes of finding the coordinates, and they'd already sent sort of an ambulance on the way roughly to Gisborne Forest, and they'd sent an air ambulance, but they didn't know exactly where they were going. So it was only when I actually told them the exact coordinates that they actually knew exactly where to go and they could go in the right direction to me. So what you want to make sure is, on Google Maps on your phone, there's a really easy way of finding your coordinates. You can also download What 3 Words, which is an app that gives you 3 words that are specific to the square metre that you're sat on. You can give that to the emergency services, or you can download some kind of OS map app where you just click it once and it will tell you your coordinates. But also try to make sure that you've got one that works without internet connection, because that might be, you know, if you're in the middle of the hills in Scotland, you might not have reception for that. But that's so important, just being able to phone them and say, hi, I'm at ba 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 location. That will make things so much quicker, and I can promise you the stress of trying to look after your mate when he's lay there and also trying to tell them exactly where you are when you're not exactly sure is not a good situation to be in. Number 4 on that note is, where you can, ride with somebody else. That's really, really important. You want to be out with somebody who's there, who can look after you. But particularly if you're going to be taking risks. So if you are riding on your own, try and ride trails where there's lots of people around, where you know where you are and you're not a million miles away from safety. So when I was with Ozzy, I could completely look after him and make sure he was okay. If he was on his own, he would have been a little bit screwed, because he would have had no choice than to get up and to walk. And if his neck was broken, A, he may not have been able to do that, but B, he would have created more damage as well. You know, if things weren't as bad as they could have been, he could have moved the wrong way and, you know, damaged himself. So if you're going to do things that are particularly gnarly on the trail, make sure you ride with somebody. Now, this leads me on to when I broke my wrist. I was at Gisborne Forest again, it's a cursed place. I was at Gisborne Forest and I broke my wrist there, and I was completely on my own. Now, it was just by chance, to be honest, that I only broke one arm, and that I was on a main trail, so there were other bikers around who could have helped me if I needed it. Now, I just ended up walking my bike back to the cafe. It took me about an hour with my good arm, and just had my broken one dangling by my side. The adrenaline's going, so it doesn't hurt as much as you might think. But if I'd have broken both arms and I was in the middle of nowhere where there weren't many mountain bikers or walkers around, I could have been in a bad situation. You know, I would have had to walk out there and just leave my bike, or if I'd broken my leg or something, it could have been really bad. So I know at this point in the video this is very doom and gloom, but it pays to think about the absolute worst case scenario, which will hopefully never ever happen to you, but it's better to be prepared for that situation rather than getting caught out. I was talking to the mountain rescue after Ozzy's crash, and I heard about somebody who'd just gone out for a ride at kind of 6 o'clock at night, and the wife started to get scared because at 9 p.m. they still couldn't find them. And he knew they'd gone up to this reservoir, but hadn't told them exactly where. And he said he ended up spending the full night lay in this hole until about 6 a.m. when mountain rescue finally found him, because he was on a trail but he didn't know exactly where he was. I think he didn't have phone signal or whatever, and they couldn't find him. It took them all night. So just make sure you know exactly where you're going and you're riding with someone if you can. And then leading on to the next tip, which is tip 5, which is what this person hadn't done. Tell somebody exactly where you're going if you're going riding on your own. So if you know the route, you can use something like Strava Beacon, which sends a text to your loved one at home and they can track where you're riding. So if you call them and say, I need help, they can see on the GPS exactly where you are and exactly where they need to go to help you. And if for any reason you don't have that kind of technology, just really basic, just tell them where you're going. So you can just write down this route, this, here's the trails that I'm doing. And then if for any reason you do get into difficulty or you don't come back home, at least the mountain rescue and the police and people will be out looking for you, at least have a good idea where they can start the route. Because if you live somewhere like the Peak District, there's hundreds, thousands of different places you could be. Make sure you tell somebody where you're going and where you're riding. Or even better, have something like Strava Beacon where they can track your exact location. So they're the first tips really, which are all to do with communication and knowing exactly where you are. Now this leads me on to the second part and the second section, which is preparation. Now the first really important part to preparation is just wearing the right kit. So make sure that you wear a helmet, make sure you wear your elbow pads if you want them and knee pads if you want them, and just have the right kit so that if you do hit the deck, you've got that preparation, because you do not want to hit the ground without a helmet on your head. Especially at the moment with the amount of new riders there are, you see lots of people on the trails without helmets, and you want to make sure you do wear a helmet. It's integral, it really is so important. The second thing is, if you're going out for a ride with a certain length of time, if you're with a couple of mates, try and make sure that one of you has a first aid kit. So if something does go wrong, you've got bandages, you've got sling, you've got things there to help out in that situation, to wrap up any wounds, to look after things. So make sure you do that first and foremost. Make sure you carry a first aid kit with you. And then you may also want to include some sugar in there, like jelly beans, and maybe some painkillers, so that if somebody does break a bone, you can give them some painkillers, give them some sugar, which will pick them up, and then that'll at least help them through that situation. And as well as that, make sure that you bring some warm extra layers as well. So when me and Ozzy were out riding at Gisborne, it was a nice sunny day, so I was just wearing similar clothes to what I'm wearing now, just a riding jersey and shorts. I didn't have any extra clothes with me. Now, I was stood on that hillside for about an hour between me calling 999 and the ambulance actually arriving, and I had to take my jersey off and lay it over Ozzy to keep him warm, which left me topless. So I looked like an absolute moron, stood waving the ambulance down with my top off like a real weirdo. But it could have been bad. Like if it was the middle of winter, or if the weather had changed, it started raining or getting cold, it could have quite easily got hypothermia through not wearing enough clothes. So just make sure you've got some layers with you, and then if for any reason you do end up sat on the side of a mountain for an hour, at least you've got a foil blanket or you've got some warm layers that you can put on to keep yourself warm. Don't just plan for the weather, for your perfect ride of how it's going to go. Just plan for that worst case as well, of what if I end up sat up on the side of a hill for an hour. That's really important, taking some good clothes with you. And this leads me on to the end, and this is down to how to crash less. So a lot of crashes are just down to silly mistakes. Ozzy going off the drop was just down to inexperience and sort of a false confidence. He thought that if I just ride off this drop, I'll land it. In reality, he needed to be able to manual off it, to have the right amount of speed, and to have a little practice on smaller drops before he sent a 5-foot one. That's why it went wrong for him. For me, with breaking my wrist, I was just going too far. I was a bit stressed out and I wasn't really concentrating on the trail. I made a stupid mistake, put my hand out and ended up snapping my wrist. So a lot of crashes on the bike and a lot of things that lead to accidents can just be caused by silly little mistakes that could be avoided. So try and avoid the crashes in the first place. So here's 4 tips to help you do that. Number 4 is to build up over time. So build up your confidence over time, build up your skill level over time, and just build up step by step by step. You don't want to go from doing no kind of drops to suddenly doing 6-foot drops. You want to just build it up over time and just be patient with it. You don't want to rush things, because when you do rush things and you attack things that are beyond your current fitness level or your current skill level, that's when it can go wrong. Number 2 is to take educated risks, and this kind of comes with experience on the bike and knowing what you can do and what you can't do. There might be a particularly steep and technical section of trail that you think you can do, but you're a little bit, can I, can't I? That's the type of risk that you want to take when the conditions when the conditions are good and when you're with somebody as well, so that if it does go wrong, you've got someone there to look after you. So take educated risks. Again, that kind of comes with experience. The more you ride, the more you know what you can and can't do. So just be aware of that and take educated risks on the bike. Number 3, pay attention to how you're feeling that day. So if you're feeling nervous, or if you're feeling stressed out, or if you're not fully concentrating on the ride, just back off a little bit until you get into the ride properly. The worst thing you can do is to go out and notice you're feeling stiff and you're feeling stressed and your mind is on what's happened at home, and then try and ride a downhill at the same speed as you would normally, because that's when it goes wrong. Pay attention to how you're feeling that day, and if you're not feeling quite yourself, back off a little bit, take a little bit longer to warm up, maybe go down the first downhill at a slower pace until you can warm up and get into the ride. And if you do that, you're much less likely to crash. That's why I broke my wrist, like I say, because I was rushed, I was stressed, and instead of slowing, I tried to push and go quick. I made a stupid mistake, and then for the next few months I was in a cast. And number 4, just ride what you want to ride and don't be afraid of saying no. So if you're out with your mates and they're doing a drop, just because they can do it doesn't mean that A, you can do it or that you have to do it. So don't give in to peer pressure. Don't worry about it. Just say no if you don't want to do something. If you're going riding with someone who's been riding for 5 years and you're in your first year of riding, something to them is very easy, which to you could be really difficult. So strike that balance between knowing when to walk away, when to say no, and when to send it and go for it. And that just comes with time. But don't feel pressured to do something if you don't want to do it today. But again, don't let that hold you back. You do need to take some risks to get better on the trail. You do need to do some things that push you out of your comfort zone. So I hope you enjoyed that. They're all the tips that I've got for you there, and it's well worth you spending the time to watch this video, and thanks for doing that. Hopefully some of those tips will bring up things that you've not really thought about before, and it could really help you or a friend out on the trail. Something that we don't really want to think about. We don't want to think about crashing, we don't want to think about breaking bones. Hopefully it'll either never happen to you or it'll happen very infrequently if you do have a crash. But just remember that if it does happen, you better be over-prepared than under-prepared for it. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you've got some more tips that you'd like to add, please leave a comment and just let me know what you would like to add to this if you think I've missed something out. Maybe let me know your favourite tip as well, and particularly what you've taken from it. And to watch more MTB fitness videos on the next screen, pick a video to watch and make sure you subscribe as well. Thanks so much!